Jay's like, I don't know where to go with that one.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'm Stephen A. Smithing this. I'm just gonna step back and ignore everything and just let it play out.
Jay has learned when the topic gets to conservatism, he just goes, "Yeah, we probably shouldn't have this conversation."
cool. Yeah, at least you're not Skip Baylessing it. It could be a hell of a lot worse. Hi, everyone.
Shit, Bayless. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the completely unprepared podcast. My name is David.
I'm Jordan.
I'm Kyra.
Brock Osweiler.
Yes.
Oh, Brock. Okay, all right. I'm ready.
That kid is so bad. Yeah, the thing again that I have against Brock Osweiler is his throwing motion is just absolutely awful. Like, everyone's like, oh, what was he thinking throwing into that triple coverage? And my contention is that he probably didn't even see the triple coverage because he's rotating his body like he's got giant 1980s shoulder pads on. He looks like he's throwing like John Elway or Doug Flutie, all those old guys, but because they couldn't get that full range of motion because they couldn't get their shoulders up all the way. And so he's dropping his head so he can't see what's going as he's releasing. So it's no surprise to me that he's throwing into random spots because his throwing motion is so outdated and garbage.
It's because he used to be the tallest quarterback in the FBS when he was at Arizona State. Duh.
And that's fine, but keep your head up, look where you're throwing, put your arms up, and throw with a proper motion.
It's so hard saying this, but I mean, you know, in the division, Denver's 3-5, and Kansas City's at 6-3 or something like that. Oakland's 4-5, whatever. So it's not like, it's absolutely terrible, bottom of the barrel. Like, we are the worst team ever. We're not the Browns.
No, you're in the worst spot that there is to be because you're awful. There's no chance of making the playoffs, and you're gonna have a shitty draft pick.
Yeah. So it's hard to say this though, but I feel like just this whole complete issue that Jay has with Brock Osweiler and his mechanics is very emblematic of how the past couple of years have been for Denver, and especially this year between just Trevor Siemian, and I feel just this whole entire team, maybe not the whole team, our defense is still very good, and that side of the ball is pretty great. And you look at the numbers and statistically, because I was comparing just looking at team stats for Denver and then its opponents, and it's not terrible. I mean, there's no obviously terrifying discrepancy outside of sacks and tackles for loss allowed. But I feel like the offense just doesn't know what they're doing. And it's hard to kind of watch because everybody's kind of running their own game on this offense, and everybody's just kind of doing what they think is best, and there's no cohesion. And that comes from having a strong central leader. This is exactly what we were talking about, and everybody will be the first to admit that, S. Peyton being on that team contributed a lot to their success, but ultimately it was more his role as being able to convene everybody and get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, especially in his later seasons.
Yeah, and people will listen to him. All the players listen to him in that locker room. And now, I mean, there are still some leaders, there's still some vets on that team. But next week with that Patriots game is going to be, I think I'm free. No, actually, my class ends about half an hour after that. So, it's going to be a rough one on Sunday.
Yeah. You have that bottle ready.
Ready, yeah. That'll be my my one day where I'm allowing myself supposedly 3 or fewer drinks.
So I don't want to push this too much, but here's the problem that Denver sits with is you guys have an amazing defense right now, and you guys have a
Yeah.
piss poor offense. But you're, how many more years of that amazing defense are you really going to have?
Yeah.
How old is
Yeah.
Talib? How old is Davis?
Wait, Davis? Oh, Todd Davis.
For the record, by the way, Aqib Talib is 31 years old. Von Miller is 28 years old.
Well, I mean, it's hard because you have a lot of actually, like, now that I look at this, there are a lot of guys who have 3-4 years experience kind of hovering around there.
Which really means it's going to be hard to pay them.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult because you have a lot of these guys that have played for one of the top defenses in the entire NFL. I mean, even just looking here, you have Zach Kerr.
Yeah.
He's been standout, and he's only been in the league for 4 years. Like Todd Davis, you referenced, he's been there for 4 years. A lot of these guys are really starting to kind of come up into, okay, yeah, I've played on this team. Like,
yeah, they're gonna go off and do the Danny Trevathan, Calais Campbell. I'm at my spot. I'm gonna go make my money now thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Where...
For referring to your point of age, by the way, the oldest players on that team, besides some of the oldest players, I'm not going to say the top ones because they're not interesting, but Aqib Talib, 31, Jamal Charles is 30, Emmanuel Sanders is 30, Demaryius Thomas is 29, Chris Harris is 28, Brandon Marshall's 28, Von Miller's 28.
Yeah.
So you got some guys that have been there for a little while. CJ Anderson's 26.
However,
you got some guys that have been there.
I would like to push back on one thing here because the assertion here is that where I'm saying the issue with them is that by the time they get the offense in order, the defense is going to be old enough or fragmented enough that you're going to be just right at the same spot, just at the middle of the line on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to sync up. And actually, it's really interesting you bring up that point because I feel like the Broncos are one of the teams in the past couple of years who have tried to focus on, offensive production.
But what
like you have...
I was just going to say, what I think is stereo is like they've been a team that is focused on offensive production just from the stance of they had, arguably the greatest regular season quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
And they had pieces around him that, were built in a way that were able to show off what he could do. But one of the things that I've been hearing lately over the past week as a criticism on the Broncos is that, John Elway isn't actually that great of a GM, that he doesn't actually really know what he's doing. He just got lucky because he had Peyton Manning, and then, that just kind of, hid the fact that he wasn't doing that well. Well, he's been the GM since 2011. And
wow.
so all of these young guys that we're talking about on defense here, like the drafted players, that's him, and signing Aqib Talib, that's him, and so I guess while I look at it and I go, you're gonna run into the problem where by the time the offense gets its shit together, like the defense is gonna be aging. I also have no doubt that the guy who assembled this team to begin with can't identify those same things in the future. So I almost like look at this team and just go, what'd you say? They're 3-6, 3-5, something like that.
3-5.
3-5. Like you could push for a 10-6, a 9-7 season. I mean, you really got to get to 10-6 in the AFC.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. I mean, you bring up a really good point. There's been a lot of, I think, ire towards a front office, and that's an easy blame to lay. I mean, it's easy for fans to just be like,
yeah, they're not the Browns.
He's out of touch. He doesn't know. Yeah, I mean, literally, we were just talking about earlier today. Like, we can always hate on the Browns ownership. Like, everybody. That's such a common storyline. But I think what's also a really good point too is, when Peyton came in, it was a big transition period for the Broncos. And I think you see a lot of these teams also trying to figure out how to transition because NFL is a little different than, I mean, with college, you have so much crazy every single year. You don't know what coaches are going to stay outside of like, you know, obviously the ones who have been there for fucking ever, Kansas State, whatever. And like, but when it comes to the NFL, that sort of turnover didn't used to be as frequent. But I feel like lately it has become a lot more frequent. So you're seeing a lot of fresh faces in these coaching staffs, and a lot of the coaching staffs from the NFL are starting to go back into college because there's money to be made there, whereas there really didn't used to be. So it's a lot. I mean, a lot of these teams are transitioning too. I mean, you know, you have, especially in that particular division, the Rams, not the Rams, the Chargers, they are going to be, obviously I just mixed up two LA teams, but the Chargers are going to be transitioning a ridiculous amount for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah. Well, but fortunately for the Chargers, what they have is they have an up and coming defense. They have Ingram, they have Bosa. I think was it Verrett who hurt himself earlier in the season? Like he'll be coming back. You know, they're in a much better spot than I think some of these other teams are in. But I even just like, you know, as we're talking about this on the Broncos, like I just looked at their depth chart and I'm just like clicking on their players. It's like Brandon Marshall, 6 years, 6-year vet. You know, Derek Wolfe, 6-year vet. Like all of these players were brought in under Elway. Why are we giving him such shit all of a sudden just because, you know, they haven't really it's one position that they haven't figured out.
No, yeah, and I think that the main issue that I see for Denver, I definitely don't put anything on Elway, but I think what Denver is going to have to face is the same problem that the Steelers went through over the past decade or so. That they were very much established as the defensive team, with that stout defense, and then just over time because of cap space and retiring and all that, and they got so focused. Steelers got so focused on the offense that all of a sudden they had this great offense and they had no defense. So I think that's the concern for the Broncos is that they're heading kind of in that direction. Like they're so afraid of this offense that they have.
Well, and I think a lot of it too goes back to coaches. I mean, there's a great, you can say John Elway's been there since 2011 and things like that. But even just since 2011, we've had 3 different head coaches.
Yep.
Each of which has a very, very diverse style. Whereas with the Steelers, I mean, that shift that you're talking about pretty much came between Cowher and Tomlin.
That's true.
Like, that was once Cowher started kind of not losing control, but once that team started to go in that direction, he was like, okay, it's time for a shift. The NFL, the league is changing.
Yep.
Like, the style of play is starting to change, and they kind of recognize that. And I think a lot of teams recognize that in the past, in that, gosh, that's already like, 6-8 years ago.
Yeah. And that's what great coaches do is that they have that ability to pivot and when they start seeing things changing, which is the biggest praise that I actually will ever give to Nick Saban is that he is so good at seeing things changing and recognizing the situation and adjusting to that no matter how much he hates it. Ridiculous
how smart he is about that and how he anticipates things coming like 3-4 years down the line. But like, it's not that he goes to these kids when they're freshmen in high school, because obviously, NCAA restrictions and stuff. But it's not that he's like, okay, I'm going to set the tone. It's more like he's so in tune with his players and he's always so grounded with what's going on in that program and so involved that he sees it firsthand.
Yeah.
And that's where, there's some NFL coaches. I feel like NFL, it's easier to see that, but college, you don't see that nearly as often, especially with the shifts that it's been experiencing lately.
Yeah, and you can see his changes in recruiting too. Like, back in like 2010, around that time, he was just getting monstrous looking dude, just big dudes, which great strategy, but they were too slow. So they were getting beat. And that's the same point where he started talking about how much he hated the spread offense and how it was ruining the game. and your thought is, oh well, now I know how to beat Nick Saban, and then all of a sudden you start seeing him recruiting all these like linebackers that are slender and tall, and they look a lot more like safeties, and now they're just this fast, aggressive, powerful defense year in year out because he just changes his recruiting to match the game. So he's just so good at that adjustment and recognizing what he needs to do to win, regardless of whether he likes it or not.
And the thing with that too is he sets the storyline so much like how Bill Belichick will set the storyline in the NFL year after year. Like they are the ones that other coaches look to, and that if they start to kind of make a shift in how they draft or in how they recruit, everybody else will scramble and be like, we need to follow this. We need to do exactly that. And
Mike Leach.
It's just hot Mike Leach. Oh,
Mike Leach is a leader.
Where's the quote book?
Let me see if I can pull that up. All right. When asked about the officiating after Texas Tech's Gator Bowl victory over Virginia, Mike Leach said, "I do not comment on officiating. I just give out hams is what I do."
Wait, what?
I do not comment on officiating. I just give out hams is what I do. Yep.
First of all, now I'm picturing
you get a honey ham and you get a honey ham.
Best Christmas ever.
I would like a Mike Leach honey ham.
That was 2 years before Jay-Z and Kanye West came out with Watch the Throne and they made the song Ham. Mike Leach was first.
Mike Leach is a pioneer.
And a Viking.
How did Washington State fare this past weekend?
Yeah, Wazoo 24, Stanford 21.
I thought Stanford was going to decimate Washington State because Washington State has looked very vulnerable up the gut. Because their middle defense is blasé. Hercules Mataafa, he plays with a chip on his shoulder, and when he lays down the boom, it's great. But he absolutely overcommits, so that hole always opens up. But kudos to them. They managed to keep Bryce Love in check for the most part.
Well, outside of the Arizona game, that was the most points that they'd allowed all season because Arizona exploited that, and that's because obviously Khalil Tate. Like when you have a quarterback like that and a defense where that weakness is right there in the middle, like Arizona just completely came out and crushed it 2 weeks ago. Whereas, previously Washington State held Oregon to 10. They lost a shit ton to California. Held Colorado 0, and then Stanford 21. I didn't even see how Bryce Love did in that game. He had 1 touchdown, 16 carries for 69 yards. So obviously, still the lead, nice. But
I think that you have to look at the Oregon game to understand why Stanford got beaten here and why he got held in check is because they knew it's going to be a one-dimensional offense. And they were able to adjust because that's exactly what Oregon has. Stanford has a much better one-dimensional offense. But it's just when they know what you're going to do, they're like, all right, well, let's just hold the line at the middle, and we can give up the side because they're not going to hit it.
Yep, fewest rushing yards that Bryce Love has had all season, not counting when he sat out against Oregon State. So, good job, Mike Leach. You can give out a ham to Bryce Love. What else happened in I guess college?
Ohio State lost.
Yeah.
That was pretty
that was one where I'm not even gonna lie, I watched only the first 2 quarters, first half, I guess that's the thing, of that game. So I didn't see, but the whole entire time you're looking at the score and you're looking at Iowa start to run it up and you're just like, okay, at some point Ohio State's going to put the stop down. Like at some point they're going to show how they were against Penn State. They're going to come out with that fourth quarter. Like, Urban Meyer is going to make whatever adjustments. And Iowa's not exactly the hardest team to stop. Yes, they've had some high scoring games this year, but they only broke 40 so far against Iowa State and Illinois. So you just kind of kept expecting, like, okay, Ohio State's going to come back. They're going to shut it down. No, Iowa just kept scoring. And that was just, it was weird to watch.
Speaking of, Husky fans are all up in arms right now because Joey Galloway, he said he praised Wisconsin while at the same time shitting on UW. I guess they're both UW, while shitting on Washington, because Wisconsin generally schedules pretty heavy or pretty good out of conference, and Washington hasn't scheduled anything good for a very long time. And Washington fans are all up in arms because, rightfully so. I mean, this is a fair argument. The reason why for this year, and I believe last year, it might be next year, the reason why their out of conference schedule is so shitty is because they scheduled Wisconsin for a home and home, and Wisconsin pulled out on them. However, regardless of that, prior to that, Wisconsin has opened up against plenty of top 10 teams. Like they've opened up against Alabama, Florida State, all these other ones. They consistently schedule big games, whereas the past 3 seasons, Washington's marquee out-of-conference games have been Boise State, Eastern Washington, and Rutgers. The home and home with Rutgers. So 4 years that their marquee matchups are an FCS team, a G5 team, and Rutgers twice. You can't make the argument that you often schedule great teams when those are the top matchups that you have every season. I mean, cry all you want about Wisconsin pulling out, but that doesn't make up for all these other ones that you've consistently been scheduling. And credit where credit's due, they also have a pretty good matchups in the next few years. I think they have Michigan, they have BYU, they have I think they'll have Ohio State eventually.
Yeah,
Well,
no, you're right. And
Boise State isn't a dumpster.
Yeah, but when it's your marquee over the past 4 years,
Yeah,
that's
enough.
not pretty.
Yeah. I do want to go back real quick.
Mhm.
The last time that Iowa football scored more than 50 points was actually in 2015. They won over North Texas 62-16. Prior to that, in 2013, they beat Western Michigan 59-3. Last time in Big Ten play that they scored more than 50 points was in 2008 at Minnesota. They blanked the Gophers 55-0.
Holy shit.
Wow. So
Kirk Ferentz.
that's embarrassing for Ohio State. I mean, if they weren't already embarrassed enough.
But,
yeah. Ferentz is just such a weird coach. Every season, you can expect him to win 0 games or win Coach of the Year. There's no consistency to it.
Well, I think a lot of that, I mean, this goes back to exactly what you were just saying about Wisconsin. A lot of that goes back to the Big Ten and how each year, like interleague or interconference, or I guess interdivision or interconference play shakes out, because Wisconsin's league division, there we go, whatever. Wisconsin's division has never been historically very strong, whereas when they made the divisions into East and West, like even before the divisions, the other teams in the Big Ten West were never, the big powerhouses out of the Big Ten. Yeah. And then in Big Ten East, you obviously have Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and then the weirdness that is always Indiana that you can never count on.
No, yeah.
So, I mean, when you have Kirk Ferentz, who's been around the Big Ten for, feels like longer than I've been alive, that man is just, I mean, he hasn't really been around how many years? Hold on. He's been their head coach since 1998. So when you've been around the Big Ten that long and you see these other teams and you see how all of these other teams have really evolved, like Big Ten's had a big banner year this year too, and it's hard because now the narrative have changed to, like, did the Big Ten lose out? Are they not going to be in the CFP? Like, this past weekend really kind of screwed them over, and that's the media line that's occurring now, much to the chagrin of the Big Ten, I'm sure. but leave it to Iowa. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't going to be Iowa, it was going to be another team that's just kind of weird, like Northwestern or even like probably Maryland or Indiana, who just have a weird game against even the middle of the ground Big Ten team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always those weird shakeups that just are out of nowhere. And you actually almost hope that the team that gets the upset turns out to just be awful. So that way it's just even more exciting. Like
Chaos.
with Iowa State beating Oklahoma, that's actually looking better for Oklahoma now because it turns out that Iowa State's actually a pretty decent team. But it would have been so much more juicy if they were 1-11 with that one being over Oklahoma.
Yes.
Also, speaking of the CFP picture and interesting teams, UCF is undefeated still. They have Connecticut and Temple coming up, which are meh teams. But after that, they're going up against Charlie Strong and USF, which is a very good team. And if they manage to go undefeated, there is a chance that we could see the first G5 team in the playoffs.
God bless Scott Frost.
Scotty Frost.
Oh, man.
That would actually be great.
Well, and it's so, I think the really interesting thing with UCF and even USF too, to an extent, is the storyline of them coming into the season. Basically, they were 2-0 until week 6, right? Because 3 of their first 5 games got canceled.
Yeah.
And made up, obviously, as well. But you have a team that comes from, this has been a really tough year for just the entire state of Florida outside of the gridiron. And now you have teams like UCF, USF, like really making a huge case for themselves in the American Athletic Conference. I think it's great. I think Scott Frost, definitely, the winning out is a huge, huge part of it. But we've only got the 3 games, and it's ending with USF. And what was USF's one loss this year?
I believe it was to Memphis.
Yeah, and I mean,
yeah, and that's a stout team too.
Yeah, and UCF
which got beaten by UCF. Yeah.
40-13. So it's like, no, but yeah, I'm excited about that one. That's the one interesting thing too is even if they do win out, that where they're at now, because they're at what? Are they 18 in the rankings, something like that?
They are sitting at 18. Yes.
Yeah. So pretty much everywhere from even just looking at it now, everywhere from 12 down is completely up in the air. You could even argue everywhere from like 10 or 9 down is still going to be hard.
You know what else? Speaking of Florida and how in Florida is right now. If you look at the records of all the teams in Florida, you have UCF and USF at the top. Then, you have Miami, UCF at the top. USF is right there with 1 loss. Then you have Florida Atlantic, which is 1 game away from being bowl eligible. And then you have Florida and Florida State at the bottom.
Oh, God.
When's the last time that fucking happened?
With both of them, a long time.
Yeah. Well, for record...
for one of them, probably not as long, but for both of them...
Florida State has been bowl eligible for, 34 years? They have by far the longest bowl game streak, and it's about to be snapped.
It's coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm happy that they rescheduled that Louisiana Monroe game at the end of the season, because I am after how this season has gone for Florida State, especially after that blowout loss to Boston College, which still was just scintillating. As you guys know, I love me some Louisiana Monroe. So even though they haven't been as up as they could be, but they had a tough loss to South Alabama. But it's going to be. I'm really excited to see. That's also I can't remember the last time that both those teams were that bad.
for the record, the longest active bowl eligibility streaks in college football right now. You have Florida State at the top with 35.
Ooh.
And then you have, that's about to end. 35 straight, about to come to an end. But behind them is Virginia Tech at 24. So they had 11 years on the next person behind them. And now
That's
it's about
crazy.
to, now Virginia Tech's, is Virginia Tech going to be bowl eligible?
They're in the rankings right now. They are 17th, just ahead of UCF.
So I'd imagine they are already bowl eligible, right?
Let's see.
Yes, they're 7-2.
Yeah.
So they're going to advance to 25, whereas Florida State's going to go back down to 0. Georgia's going to go on, who's number 3 at 20. Oklahoma is 4th at 18, and then LSU is 5th at 17. Yeah, it looks like everybody else behind them's going to be going. What maybe BYU? Will I don't know where they're at.
So
they're first in the independents.
Looking forward to this weekend, which game are you guys more excited for? Notre Dame, Miami, or TCU, Oklahoma?
TCU, Oklahoma. And that's just because I really like watching the Sooners play and Kenny Trill.
That's very true. If it wasn't for Kenny Trill, I would say, I don't know, I'm kind of excited for Notre Dame. I've always it's so hard because being growing up a Michigan fan, you always just Notre Dame's overrated. But that's going to be a really good one. I think just with how Notre Dame's offense has been performing and an undefeated Miami, I mean, that's always going to be a draw.
Yeah, Notre Dame, interestingly enough, having a great season, despite the fact that they have the chance to have played 4 of the 5 P5 conference championships, depending on how things play out. But they played against Georgia, they played against USC, they're playing Miami, and they're playing Michigan State, all of which have a strong chance of being the winners of their conferences. So kudos to them for doing very well so far, despite facing those teams.
Well, and it was just a 1-point loss to Georgia as well.
Yeah. Was it 2019, right?
Yeah. But I think that's the big thing too is, we were just talking about shifts in offense, and you've really seen Notre Dame adapt really, really well to a physical rushing offense and power running game. And I think I haven't really seen a whole lot of Miami actually this season.
It's not been pretty.
Well, and that's the thing; they're still 7th.
Yeah, I mean, they're still undefeated, which kudos to them. But it's been struggle win after struggle. Last week, not included, because they had a pretty good run in the last game. Who did they play? They played Virginia Tech, beat them 28-10. That was a pretty good one. But before that, it's 24-19 against UNC, 27-19 against Syracuse, 25-24 in a very last second win against Georgia Tech, 24-20 against Florida State. It's just all these close struggle wins, and it's just hard to really think that you're a great team when you're beating nobody and not beating them well.
Yeah. They've swung a lot too. So I don't know. I think I'm probably more excited for that. I mean, the TCU Oklahoma game though, that's definitely going to be it's very, very close as far as between those two, just because, like you said, Kenny Trill, Oklahoma, but also TCU always has the opportunity. They're definitely one of the teams that you kind of always predict to shake up the picture. So
that game has shootout written all over it too, and I love watching a good shootout.
Seriously, it's beautiful.
But yeah, those will be some interesting games.
I think those are going to be the 2 best. Those 2 in particular are going to be the 2 best ones for college. We already mentioned you got Iowa and Wisconsin. You also got Georgia and Auburn.
That game's going to be, not so much from the actual matchup standpoint, because I really do feel like Georgia and Auburn are 2 very different styles, and so I think it'll be interesting to see how they adapt for that. but more so for the college football playoff narrative of, if Georgia loses or if Auburn wins out, or no, it's more so if Auburn wins out, would they accept a 2-loss SEC team in the CFP top 4 or whatever it is over like if Washington wins out and they're only a 1-loss Pac-12 team? Like that's been a big thing that a ton of people have been talking about this past week.
I say absolutely. I mean, because if Auburn wins out, they'll have beaten Georgia and Alabama to get there.
Yeah.
And Washington will have beaten Rutgers.
Yeah.
I mean,
so that's where I think, that would be an interesting matchup just in terms of if Auburn pulls that off, then they actually have a very good shot at being a 2-loss SEC team.
Well, and if you want some idea on how important this game is to the people of Auburn, I'm looking at ESPN's site right now, and there's a category on the far right column called tickets. It takes you to Vivid Seats. The Georgia-Auburn game is the only game on this ticket list that's above $200. The next ticket price is below $100.
Wow.
So they're oh no, I'm wrong. I just found one. Notre Dame Miami is $153. So Notre Dame Miami is $153. And this is from, right? So this is the low price one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Auburn Georgia is $214. So like those
Miami also has a pretty small stadium, don't they? If I'm not mistaken.
I'm not familiar with it.
Hard
Rock Stadium in Miami, it is capacity 65,000.
Yeah, see.
Yeah.
I mean, when you compare it to some of the
compared to like Nebraska Stadium and shit.
Yeah, because like
meanwhile,
if we're looking at that whole thing, like I would, if we're just looking at terms of the value of the ticket, not including the size of the stadium, I think Michigan State at Ohio State would be much more expensive than that.
Oh, definitely. That's actually going to be one hell of a game this weekend, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm stoked for that.
That's going to be a great thing to wake up with on the West Coast.
Yeah, 102,000.
Yeah,
that plus also Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Those two 9 a.m. games are going to be awesome to have at 9 a.m. So, meanwhile, I do see the same ticket information and NC State, Boston College. $5.
Yeah.
And that's a top 25 team, too.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. I got you beat, though. Virginia at Louisville, $4.
Woo!
There you go.
You can go see a Heisman winner.
Nope, here you go. Here you go. Arkansas State at South Alabama, $3.
Yes. Let's go right now.
Wait, Kansas at Texas, $2.
Wait, are you serious?
That's actually surprising. Yep, I see that right there. That's actually surprising.
Who just beat Texas this past weekend? That was because I remember that being like a weirdly interesting good game. TCU. There you go. Never mind. Got it. But it was only 24-7, so that's where I think it was the interesting late scoring after they came off of a very dominant win over Baylor. But
which, by the way, sad story out of the Big 12. Kansas fucked everything up and let Baylor not have a winless season.
Oh,
I know.
Thanks, Bill Snyder. Or no, that's Kansas State. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think even people in Kansas know who the head coach of Kansas is. I saw a video a couple years ago where journalists went around the campus for Kansas and they were just asking people about the football team and nobody knew anything about it. Like they're like, "What do you think of this player?" And then people were like trying to give like an opinion on him, and they're like, "Really? Because that's a basketball player."
Oh God.
Oh God. Well, David Beatty has been the Kansas Jayhawks football head coach since 2014.
Yeah.
Since the 2015 season. They did go winless in his first year.
Yep.
Also, whenever I actually Googled who is the head coach of Kansas football, it auto-completed with, "Are you sure you don't mean Kansas State?" and showed Bill Snyder in the search tool. So,
yeah. Actually, out of the two schools, I feel worse for Kansas State because, like, yeah, they have a mediocre football team that every now and then shows flashes of greatness, but they don't have that Kansas basketball team that they get to fall back on.
Oh, rock. Yeah, that's true. I mean, well, in Kansas State, like, you know, most of Kansas just to begin with, okay, but like Manhattan, yeah.
Yeah, I cannot think of a more boring place in the world than Kansas. I've been through Kansas a couple times, and every time I was just like, "Holy shit, there's nothing fucking here." It
The
looks like the
flyover Kansas.
template that you use, like a blank template for what a state should be. Like, all right, here's your template. Here's Kansas, and now you can put whatever you want here. You can put some cities, but instead you just left it as Kansas. You just left the template, and then you have Kansas.
Yeah,
It's
we
just flat and empty.
being in Colorado, every now and then we would have camping trips to Kansas or Nebraska,
Oh,
and it was just, I mean,
why?
I don't know. We had friends who had like a family like gathering out there every other year or something. They had an RV and they would take it out and set it up on a random lake like just across the border, and we would go out there and just literally do nothing. Um
Yeah.
so that's why now I
I
live in San Francisco.
My favorite part of driving through Kansas is that first minute when you're in Colorado and you see a mountain peering out of the sky. You're like, holy shit, I am
There's
still in the
something.
world. There's still things here.
Very true.
Getting back on topic. The game that we haven't mentioned that I think deserves some mentioning is Washington at Stanford. That's got some huge implications to it.
True.
Not as much as if Stanford would have beat Washington State, but it's still a big one because if Stanford wins against Washington and Washington beats Wazoo in the Apple Cup, which seems all but inevitable, then Stanford wins the Pac-12 or the Pac-12 North.
Yeah, and then it would be probably, is it USC still up for Pac-12 South?
Yeah, I think USC beating Arizona pretty much gave them the South.
Yeah.
There's still some possibilities for everybody else, but not really.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good one too. Especially, I mean, with the Bryce Love contention and everything like that. He's been drawing a lot of really good feedback nationally, but this is going to be the one where he really is able to step it up on a national stage.
Yeah, USC pretty much just took the South. I'm just looking into it now to verify, but Arizona is 4-2 in the conference. Arizona State is 4-2 in the conference. USC is 6-1.
Yeah.
USC would have to lose out, and I think Arizona State obviously would have to be the one to win out because USC has the head-to-head against Arizona State. So I believe that would be if Arizona State wins out and USC loses out. I don't know how that tiebreaker happens because you guys haven't played each other, right?
No. Yeah, so
Okay.
USC would take it anyway.
So USC has the South.
Yeah.
Nobody else is in contention.
Well,
I know. I was really excited for the possibility of Arizona winning the South and Stanford winning the North, just because everybody at the beginning of the season was like, "Oh, the North is going to go through the Apple Cup, and USC already has the South," and I was like, "What?"
You just wanted to fuck everybody over.
Yeah, I was like, "What if that wasn't the case?
What if that didn't happen?
What if the Pac-12 was like, oh, you think this is going to happen? Oh, well, how about a big fuck you? Here's Arizona and Stanford."
If anybody could do it, it would be the Pac-12. But
Alas, it's looking more and more like that. But hey, if the Stanford wins against UW, then they have a chance to win the North.
yeah, accurate.
Big game Friday. Speaking of, did you guys see that Redskins game with the Seahawks?
No.
Yeah,
It was heart pounding. I mean, it was
I
just
saw
all
everything
over
up
the
until
place.
the end.
Oh, it was quite the photo finish. But yeah, it was a very good defensive game. I mean, both defenses just came out swinging, and
Yeah,
God, it was It was much more interesting than the score would indicate.
Can you explain something to me though, Jay? Is the issue with the running game for Seattle their offensive line, or is it their running backs? Because
No, okay. So
let me explain the reason I'm asking the question first.
Go for it. Sorry.
The reason I'm asking the question is because I've been hearing a lot about, well, if they could just fix their offensive line, they could really get this running game going. And I'm looking at their running backs like, Rawls once upon a time was good, but Lacey looks like absolute horseshit, and they're not giving the ball to Rawls enough for him to establish a rhythm. And so I can't really tell where the problem lies.
Yeah, and so here's what it is. And here's my take on it. Could be, take it for what it's worth. But Seattle established themselves as the running team back when they had Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch's average point of contact was 2.5 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
But he was just so good at trucking forward that he made those runs work. And then at the same time, yeah, exactly. And you could make that work again really well with Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson was just so good at scrambling and getting out of the pocket that he didn't really need the line as much. So they skimped on the offensive line, saying, "We don't need it. Look what we can do." But
interesting.
With Marshawn Lynch leaving, now you have all these other guys that are coming in that can't do that, because only Marshawn Lynch can play like that. That all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe we actually do need an offensive line, just because no one else can get those extra yards like Marshawn could, which was kind of the key to that running offense. Because yeah, Russell Wilson can still get out of the pocket, but if there's no running game, then that read option really isn't as much of a threat as it used to be. And that read option would then force the defense to be honest, and then you could open up downfield. So if you watched the Redskins game, they weren't rushing too much. They were just dropping deep into coverage because they don't have to respect the run game as much. And as a result, their secondary played out. Their secondary played out of their minds that game.
Yeah.
But they were able to drop a lot more because they didn't have to worry about the run, because that offensive line just couldn't really hold them in check. And kudos to the Seahawks. They're doing a good job of getting in guys. They're getting Dwayne Brown. The line's looking better than it used to, but it's still not there.
Right.
No, I think that's a great point, and it's also really interesting having that be, what that issue is, and then you look at the Raiders now, and they're not exactly faring a whole lot better because Marshawn came onto that team, and it wasn't really kind of built around him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the thing with a player like him, is you have to have that line set up and on the same page as him.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
and
the difference.
Yeah, and the difference there is Derek Carr is not going to pick up as much as Russell Wilson could.
No.
With his legs.
Exactly.
He's much more of a passer, and he's great at what he does, but he doesn't have that read option threat that Russell did with Marshawn.
Is Oakland's offensive line? I mean, I actually have, as much as I should probably watch Oakland more. I know they have a bye this week, but is their offensive line kind of in that same vein, as far as like needing some restructuring? Or
I also don't know on that one, because I also don't watch as much Raider football as I would like to.
But
well, guys, we're sitting here just over an hour and a half.
Well, if you take out all of the shit in the beginning,
this is true. It's more about just time for editing for me.
That's even fine, though. Honestly, that's perfect.
It's just so we'll just end it with the same question I always ask: what game are you guys excited to watch this weekend?
Give me a moment to think on that.
I think Thursdays will be good. I like what you said about Seattle, Arizona. I think it'll be an entertaining game, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. I would say that would probably be a decent matchup.
Yeah, but to quote Jay, that's just porn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. It's gonna be likely a very high scoring Steeler game.
Yeah.
Yes. Start all your Steelers.
Yeah.
Let's see. God, there's just nothing. Saints Bills, I guess.
I've got 2 games that I'm excited about, with the exception of Pittsburgh, just because I'm excited for every Pittsburgh game.
Yeah.
There's 2 games that I'm really excited about, and that is
Ooh, I want to say. Wait, can I say Packers Bears first?
that wasn't one of mine. Go for
That's
it.
Okay,
that's a
never
good
mind.
rivalry game.
It is.
That's the only reason. I'm sorry. I
Mhm.
always look forward to that game every year. But anyway,
Yep.
continue.
Well, it also is
And-
nice because you've got a first year quarterback who actually has a chance against a struggling Green Bay team too.
Well, you have 2 first-year quarterbacks hypothetically. I mean, I know Brett Hundley's been in the league for a couple years now, but he's it's his first year starting.
He technically has less starts under his belt than Mitchell Trubisky.
Yep.
That'll actually be a really interesting quarterback matchup for it. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so
Yeah.
the 2 games I'm excited about are Dallas at Atlanta. Partially, I'm excited to see whether or not Ezekiel Elliott is still a player or not. Because
Every fucking time.
Dude, that
to
guy's
go
been
back
the
and
ultimate
forth.
fantasy tease this season. It's just, oh, he's suspended, and then like a few hours later, like, oh, just kidding.
I've
I get
wasted
so
many
irate.
pickups on Alfred
Oh.
Morris.
Yep, Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden just over and over, like, oh, guess I get to drop him again. Fucking sweet.
Especially like as a woman, I'm sorry. I'm just like, just fucking put him in. Like, just get him out. Just like, let's just go. Come on, see, like,
Stop being
it's
so
really-
indecisive.
Just get this over with. Be done. Come back next year. Anyway,
Do you guys see the thing about Jerry Jones today, though?
Go for it.
Jerry Jones is threatening to sue the league if they extend Roger Goodell's contract.
what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's getting owners together who are going to discuss it. He believes that he can get 23 owners on his side to out Jerry Jones or to out Roger Goodell. And if the owners vote to extend Roger Goodell's contract, he has threatened to sue the owners.
Okay.
I would love to see what the owners are.
I don't really know where his where his standing is, but he's gone as far as to hire a lawyer to draft up the paperwork.
That's interesting, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of weird because it's like you have a whole group of murderers who are accusing somebody else of murder, and you're just like, well, yeah, I know Goodell's a shitty person, but you guys aren't saints.
Yes.
Yep.
100%. That's why I'm like, I will be so interested if this comes to fruition to see the other owners that get on either side of this, because seriously, no, just no.
NFL owners
Anyway.
in general are some pretty shitty people.
Yeah, I mean, well, and
Allegedly.
Allegedly, there's no collusion.
That's your favorite word as a Steeler fan, isn't it?
It's my
Allegedly.
It's my favorite word as a I don't even know what the right term is, but person who's not willing to just take accusations to mean guilt.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Good.
Yeah, I totally believe in that in the justice system, but as a private citizen, I'll accuse the shit out of people.
That's true, but like when when you look at like
Jerry West, Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I mean it's case by case thing.
Yeah, it is a case by case thing, and like when you get into cases where like, yeah, if 50 women come out against Bill Cosby, and technically it's allegedly, but at the same time there's 50 fucking women. You probably and like
where there's a lot of smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, and like when you go and you look at Bill O'Reilly settled one for like $30 some million. It's like, yeah, you probably did that one too.
Yep.
You probably wouldn't settle for 30 some million if you didn't actually do it and just want it to go away. You probably wouldn't do that. I don't know you definitely wouldn't, but you probably wouldn't do that.
I mean that becomes a cost benefit analysis of
right.
Will all the lawyers and court fees that I have to go through be worth more? and generally, and especially like in sexual assault claims against colleges and college players, a lot of times they'll just settle outside of court because the school's like, we're gonna have to pay more than it's worth.
Yeah.
So to finish this off, the second game that I'm excited to see this weekend,
Oh yeah.
and I'll only actually get to see one of these because they're both on Fox and they're both at the same time. So I don't know which one the show's actually, or my TV's actually going to show. New York at San Francisco.
Oh.
Yeah, that
Giants
actually
at
has
the
a chance to
Niners.
be interesting.
Yeah, when you put two shitty teams together and you make them play, like it just becomes the CFL.
Alrighty, guys. I'm going to bed. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
All right, see you
All
later.
right, talk to you.
Bye. Well, now my dream of getting to grope Terry Cruz's balls is never going to come to fruition.